That's what it says in the corner. Just.
We are online. Leslie, I see you online. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready.
Okay, let's do the roll call.
Okay. You'll please state your name. San Mateo County. San Mateo County. Atherton.
Rick DeGloria.
Belmont.
Julia May.
Thursday.
Colleen Mackin.
Burlingame.
Donna Colson.
Colma. Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Carlos Romero.
Foster City.
Sam Hindy.
Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Leslie Ragsdale, COVID exception, Brown Act, 2449.
Los Banos. Confirm that he's not on this part of the union. Okay. That's. Okay, Menlo Park.
Betsy Nash.
You, Millbrae. Pacifica. Pacola Valley. Redwood City.
Aya Aiken.
San Bruno.
Marty Medina.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
I'm Lorraine.
South San Francisco.
Jake Pullman.
Woodside.
Kevin Bryant.
Thank you. Forum.
Great. Need to swear him in, David? Not as far as I know. Okay, great.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is public comment. And before we start public comment, I just want to read a statement, which is, I want to note the Pacific Peninsula Clean Energy Board of Directors meetings are a limited public forum, and all public comment must relate to something that is in the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. If comments do not relate to the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, or if comments include hate speech, we will stop the comment and we will move on to the next speaker. General counsel will assist in identifying comments that are not related to subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Are there any public comments?
Yeah, we do have a public comment. Second here. It'll be Dave Morrow.
Oh, good evening, Board of Directors. Good morning, and Chairman DeGolia. I'm not too sure how this works, but I have a question on consent item number 1. I don't know the process. I just want to bring that to attention. Do I pull it? But I want to ask a question about it.
Okay, Dave, we will take comments on consent matters. That's the next item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Chairman DeGolia.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, seeing no public comments, I'll close public comment. The next item on the agenda is to set the agenda and to approve the consent items. There are 4 items on consent. Is there any consent item that anyone on the board would like to pull or comment on? And yeah, go ahead. That's next.
Okay. If there's no public, I'm not moving for approval.
Okay, I do have a public comment from Dave on item number 1 on the consent agenda. Dave, why don't you give us your comment? And if you'd like to pull the matter and have us vote on it separately, that would be fine. But why don't you start with your public comment?
Well, I apologize for my ignorance on how this portion of the meeting works, but on consent item number 1, there's a list of 19 projects that are listed for funding, and I was wondering, how do what stages of these projects in? That's my question. I don't know if that's a board question or a staff question. If I need to address the staff on this, I'm just not quite sure, but I see it come up in the agenda, so I want to address it.
Let's address that. Yeah, that's a fair comment, Dave. There was some discussion on this at the executive committee, so I think it would be appropriate for,
We have Philip Kobernick here with us tonight, who, as you know, is our Director of Transportation Programs, Senior Manager of Transportation Programs, and Philip can answer the question, which, Dave, let me just make sure we heard. Your question is, what is the status, what is the status of these various contracts? Where are we at with it, correct?
Correct.
And-
Thank you, Sean.
and Philip, I think it's appropriate just to define why we're bringing this item
Right.
before us tonight.
Yes, I do.
Happy to speak to that. So these are all part of our EV Ready program, which is funding going to help our customers in our community install EV charging stations at their properties. So this is a board approved program. It's been up and running for a number of years. All these 19 agreements are customer incentive agreements. Most of these are under $100,000 and so are signed at the CEO level. These are particularly large projects, which we certainly love to see, large EV charging projects that exceed $100,000. Hence the item for board approval on those. Most of these are actually multifamily, which is of course a big focus in our EV Ready program. So these are mostly apartment buildings putting in large numbers of EV charging with our assistance. So to speak to the kind of stage of where these projects are at, these are all projects that are in construction or are near about to be in construction. So they've already been designed. They've applied for funding with Peninsula Clean Energy and are more or less ready to go if they're not already in progress. We know some of them are actually imminently about to be completed.
Okay, and then Phil,
Isn't it right that this is coming before the board tonight? Because it turned out these are contractual provisions.
Yes.
We had just assumed that the CEO could approve them and we'd go forward and fund them. But because they're contractual provisions, they needed to come before the board and they're all relatively small.
That's right. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. We've had over 100 projects already approved, mostly under the $100,000 level. There was a kind of uncertainty whether a program that was, or projects within a program that has been board approved, the funding has all been board approved, whether individual agreements with customers would also need board approval. And upon further conversations with council, we said, okay, this actually does need board approval. So hence the bringing these for board approval, and these will be brought in the future as they come up.
I have one follow-up question. Is there a way that we can get who the contractors were on these projects?
Yeah, that's all public information. We can provide that.
Okay, then maybe I'll email you next week and maybe we could chat about that. Does that sound fair?
Great.
All right, thank you so much. Chairman Agolia, thank you so much for entertaining my request. Thank you so much.
No problem, anytime. Any other comment or question about any of the consent items? Okay. Motion is in order. I have a motion from Julia and a second from Sam. I think we need to do a roll call because we have someone online.
Correct.
Correct. San Mateo County. San Mateo County. Atherton.
Yes.
Del Mar.
Yes.
Brisbane.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Colma. Daly City.
I think she's not.
We are getting some feedback. If you have your mics unmuted, please make sure they're muted. East Palo Alto.
Yes.
Foster City.
Yes.
Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Yes.
Los Llanos.
Yes.
You, Menlo Park.
Yes.
Millbrae.
Aye.
Pacifica.
Yes.
Portola Valley.
Aye.
Redwood City.
Yes.
San Bruno.
Aye.
San Carlos.
Yes.
San Mateo.
Yes.
South San Francisco.
Yes.
Woodside.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the chair report. I don't have anything substantive to report that Sean won't report, so I'll defer to Sean. Although I'm happy to be back, and I can recommend to everyone that if you ever have an opportunity to go to Italy, do it in October. It's wonderful.
Okay.
Next item is the CEO report.
Slide, please. Or Brianna? Thank you. Okay, all of these items were covered in your memo, so next slide, please. We'll just move quickly through these. The Surplus Funds Committee met the last time a month ago on September 27th. The focus of that particular meeting was doing a deeper dive into various programmatic options and ideas for additional funding. We also took some additional ideas from committee members, and then at the end of that discussion, the committee requested that staff put together a spreadsheet that lists out all the various options that we've discussed with a anticipated cost for that, and then some evaluative criteria: impact on GHG reduction, impact on customers, impact on PCE reputation, level of effort, a number of other elements that we looked at. We sent that out to the surplus fund group earlier today. We asked for you all to take a look at that, and that will be the focus of our discussion on Monday, which is our next meeting, where we hope to come to resolution and a recommendation then to advance to the CAC next week, then the executive committee, then to the full board at its next meeting in November. So if that doesn't work out, it's okay. We can go to December, but the hope is, given some of the ideas that are somewhat time sensitive around the holidays, that it might be great if we could get it done on Monday. So that's, it's all going well, and I expect a really solid outcome. Next slide is PCE national support. So I just had this in the chair report as an FYI. Peninsula Clean Energy is a member organization of Lean Energy US. Full disclosure, some of you might recall that that is an organization I founded 10 or 12 years ago now. That is a nonprofit whose focus is on the expansion and support of CCAs nationwide, especially those that focus on clean energy. And so they have continued on the work, and there's been an acknowledgement, I now serve on the board of that organization, that the federal agencies don't know anything about CCA. And in fact, if they do, they're thinking about it from sort of the Midwest East Coast model, which is a retail model that is much more passive and very unlike what we do here in California. So you'll see that there were some direct requests. Cal CCA signed on to this letter. PCE did, a number of other California CCAs, and 70 other organizations across the country. So that's just an FYI, and we do hope that there will be additional engagement with Lean going forward. Next slide is, I think, our legislative, board retreat. So you all know that our board retreat is early because of the Thanksgiving holiday. So November 16th, please come early if you would like dinner. I'll be meeting with Rick and Donna on Monday to talk about a framework that we're working on. We don't have the details all flushed out, but we're trying to kind of retool it this year to have a combined focus of some kind of big picture future orientation thinking from the board and the directors, hopefully together, because we're really all in this together. And then a couple of questions that are really specific to need to know sort of strategic goals in the near term, with the idea that we're not going to be able to get to all of it at that meeting in November. And so perhaps at every other board meeting, we would chunk it out and add a strategic question based on the department over the course of the next year. So it gives us an opportunity to not freak out in November 16th because we can't get to everything, because we won't. So that's what we're doing, and I think it's going to be helpful. Thank you. So next slide, please, is our legislative update. Mark, do you want to give this update briefly? Sorry if I failed to communicate that to you, sorry. You know what, it's okay, it's in your board packet. I should probably in the future also know exactly what this all means. But I don't want to get anything wrong right now. So what I'm gonna do is, do you have anything you want to say in particular? And then we can
There's a typo.
take questions.
73. Discussing quite well, talk about strategic plan
Great,
discussion. Our footprint bill by Senator Weiner has been in the news a great deal. Very familiar with that, and then just SB 49, Senator Becker had a number of climate action bills, energy bills this year, and the Caltrans right of way. They'll be setting ways in which they use Caltrans right of way to collect solar and battery storage. Very excited about the possibilities that may bring. And then there'll be a study in 48, SB 48, they'll be studying existing building GHGs. Because what you don't know, you can't fix. So I think senators, our local senators, and for those bills, and as I mentioned, we'll be discussing 1373 shortly.
thank you, Mark. And just to let you all know, I will be meeting with Representative Mullen next week for first introductory meeting with Mark. And Mark, I think you also have a legislative committee meeting upcoming.
Melanie, do we have that
It's coming.
on count? It's either next week or the week after.
There's a doodle. And I believe the goal for that is to dive more deeply here and then talk a little bit about platform opportunities for 24.
Every year, the platform to the board for approval, and so to kick it off, staff will review the platform. It's on the website. Documents tab, and ask everybody who's interested, please take a look at that. This is the opportunity to amend that, either add or modify what's there. We're bringing that to the legislative ad hoc subcommittee, hopefully in the next couple of weeks for their consideration. And as Sean mentioned, we are beginning to reach out to legislators or local officials for meetings to discuss year behind and the year ahead. And so be reaching out to you to participate in those meetings as we move forward. But if you are interested in attending one of those or more, please let me know, and I'd be happy to make sure get those scheduled, that you get an invitation. A lot going on as we get ready.
Thanks for the pinch it, appreciate it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, automation IT. Hopefully, when you guys walked in here, you all noticed that it was a much larger screen. So people like me who don't see very well are doing much better tonight. Thank you. And apparently, there's also a new audio function that the team put together. And hopefully those of you that are remote, Mayor Giannis, Leslie Ragsdale, that you guys can hear better and it's better quality. Fingers crossed, right? We launched our Bamboo HR information system that is basically a central point of contact for HR, which automates a number of the functions that we had done manually previously. That was launched this past month. And this meeting packet was done through Peak Agenda. So staff had a little bit of a learning curve on how to shift. And there will be a bolt-on to Peak Agenda for minutes, which will improve access to the public, ease of access to certain agenda items in the minutes. So moving on with that and more to come. Next slide. Do want to announce that our own Jeremy Wayan, who's been with the organization almost from the beginning, has been promoted. He's our first promotion to Senior Director in our organization of regulatory policy, and we'll be hearing from him later. Congratulations, Jeremy. Do want to let you know that we are coming close on the COO, CFO recruitments, hoping to have some announcements to make next week. Next slide. There are still a couple of open positions, although I think we're also coming close on the Los Banos Community Relations hire, which will be super. And those others are in process. And last but not least, there's maybe one or two more. Next slide, please. The Energy Policy Institute at UC Berkeley, Haas School of Business, hosts an annual power meeting, and then mid-year hosts sort of a policy-related update. We are a sponsor of that power conference each year, so we have 4 complimentary tickets. If any board members would like to go on November 15th, please reach out to Nellie. We'd love to have you join us. And then I think the next slide, please, is all of our upcoming meetings for November. Noting that Audit and Finance on November 6th has been canceled. Executive Committee will still happen that day, and we start early on the 16th at 5:30. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Community Advisory Committee report, and we have Cheryl online.
Can you see me? This is a new format and I can't see myself.
We can see you.
Okay, great. Okay, good evening, Honorable Chair DeGolia and members of the board. The Community Advisory Committee met Thursday, October 12th. During member introductions, I asked each person there to share what California energy-related topic they'd like to understand better. More than half were deeply puzzled about the CPUC, its relationship to the California Energy Commission, the California Independent System Operator, the legislature, and the governor. We're eager to get a better perspective on the CPUC since it has a profound effect on PCE's work. Rafael Reyes, Director of Energy Programs, explained how PCE is using distributed energy resources to meet its goals. He shared a fascinating analysis of power outages in the county and opportunities to boost customer resilience. We talked about the pros and cons of deploying DERs, and members suggested coupling end-use storage with other emergency preparedness action and bidirectional charging as a potential solution for energy storage. Connor Prince, Senior Analyst, Account Services, gave an overview of PCE's proposed solar billing plan. He explained that the policy's intent is to encourage energy storage at homes. The committee talked about how this policy will impact the economics of installing residential solar, especially since excess solar generation now will be credited at a lower dollar amount. The CAC eagerly listened as member Stephen Booker summarized Staff Committee on Budget Surplus considerations. Our members had 5 suggestions. Issuing a broad rebate would be a chance to raise positive awareness of PCE. Increasing the 5% discount on electricity production compared to PG&E rates, but Stephen said the committee recommends keeping the 5% discount. A third recommendation was funding portable appliances and deploying batteries in areas highly impacted by power outages. 4, supporting a pilot microgrid program in areas impacted by outages. And finally, expanding the 0% loan program in anticipation of more interest in home electrification and financing. Our committee approved a 2024 meeting schedule that allows us to gather 2 weeks before your board meetings. 4 working groups focused on 1, building electrification, 2, an EV managed charging program, 3, education, and 4, local solar plus storage programs reported that they are meeting regularly and reviewing and researching opportunities. Vanessa Shin, Community Outreach Specialist, reminded us about upcoming community events so that we can share them with our networks. And lastly, member Gail Lee announced that SunShares gives a solar and battery storage discount to San Mateo County residents, and the deadline to sign up is November 15th. That's my report. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions from anyone on the board? Cheryl, I don't see any questions. Is there any public comment? I don't see any public comment. Yes.
There's that we updated the format of the meetings, and so they are being held as webinars now. So there's been some updated links, and a new format for people who are attending. So for those who are in the meeting as a member of the public, please be very diligent about raising your hand if you would like to give public comment, and then we will call on you and I will give the access so that you can unmute and provide your public comment. So just be very diligent about that, and that explains, Cheryl, what you were experiencing before. Interesting note that you are not able to see yourself from there because we can see you perfectly.
Okay, well, now I can. But I couldn't at the beginning.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
All right.
Next item on the agenda is the solar billing program. This is an action item.
Leslie Brown, our Director of Account Services, will be presented.
Thank you. So this is the solar billing plan policy proposal, formerly known as net billing tariff. Net billing tariff is actually what the CPUC refers to in their decision. The investor and utilities have decided that the customer-facing name, street name for the program tariff is going to be solar billing plan. So that is what we're going with to minimize confusion. Where am I going? Okay. There we go. Sorry. Okay, so what is the solar billing plan? We've talked about this a couple times before, but it's the new solar interconnection policy for all rooftop solar applications that came in after April 15th of this year. Previously, there was a NEM 2.0 program, which varied slightly from NEM 1.0. That was the interconnection policy that had been in place in California for over 20 years. So this is a new program that is no longer net metering. It is a net billing program that is going to, has different incentives than the original net metering program. This program is meant to incentivize customers to not export energy middle of the day because it is crediting every kilowatt hour that comes off the home back to the grid at a marginal sort of grid valued rate. And every kilowatt hour that is pulled off the grid to your home is charged at a retail rate. Previously, you could net those back and forth, and that's where the term net metering came from. That's not what's happening anymore. So you're charged a retail charge for every kilowatt hour pulled off the grid. You're given an offsetting lower valued grid credit for every kilowatt hour that's coming off the system. And so really the incentive structure there is to use those kilowatt hours at home. Don't push them off to the grid. If you are going to push them off to the grid, you've got prices that vary throughout the day. And the only time it really could be a little bit advantageous for you to push kilowatt hours off the grid is if you're doing it during the peak times, 4 to 9 p.m. in the summer. So that's sort of the summary of the intents of the policy from the state perspective. Peninsula Clean Energy's policy that we're proposing is actually going to be very similar to the state policy. It's a very complex change in billing for customers in a very different way of measuring energy usage and used from a solar system. So we took a look at this from a lot of different angles. Actually started off from the position of what if we didn't do anything? What if we kept everybody at on our side at an M2? And we just said, forget about it. let's not, you know, state can do their own thing. We're gonna do our own thing. Let's just keep it simple. It actually is not simple. It's very complicated to do it that way. When we got into it and really did the analysis on it, because it's not just actually a rate differential. It is actually a completely different way of measuring and determining your energy usage at your home and how to bill you. If we stayed in that space where we were just looking at an M2 perspective, our side of the bill would be very disconnected from the PG&E side of the bill. We wouldn't even have matching kilowatt hours to look at back and forth. And so sort of came full circle in that and said, okay, let's follow the state's policy right now, make some couple of tweaks that we think are important to make we think are places we can differentiate to make it a little bit nicer for customers, watch it for a year or so, see how this implementation goes, and then revisit it and see if we want to make some more adjustments going forward. So really the intent right now is to keep it as simple as possible while we make this transition for the new customers that are coming onto the program, which is a couple hundred, and the legacy transition customers that their NEM1 interconnection agreements have expired. And so they're going to be transitioning over to this new program in this next year, which is about 150, 200 customers or so. Again, the export credits, just highlighting here, I'll show you a picture of it, but the export credits are calculated by a wholly different process in this avoided cost calculator, but they are giving a sort of real-time grid value for the system, which is for the energy, which is much lower than the retail cost. I mean, so again, this is something I've showed before, but this is an example of a 1 month snapshot of like the export credit value. So it's 540 some odd different individual rates that could be charged throughout the year, credited back. Yeah, there we go. We'll move on from that. One of the things where we're in the areas we want to differentiate just a little bit is in that annual cash out process. So these are for customers that if they generate more energy throughout the year than they consume, if they're using less energy than their solar system produces. Right now, those customers are being credited at a retail rate under the NEM2 program. And then we write them a check during our cash out period in April for that retail value that they've earned throughout the year. In this scenario with the solar billing plan customers, that credit that they would be earning throughout the year would be at that lower EEC rate. And so what we're looking to do for those customers when they come around and have the cash out period in April, calculate the net surplus compensation rate. This is a calculation that we previously have not done before for our customers in the NEM 2.0 program for the investor-owned utilities. And a lot of the CCAs, what they do is they will do this recalculation at the net surplus compensation rate, which is a different sort of grid value that's been part of that program for a long time. But they will then, issue their refund checks to customers at that from the retail rate at that net surplus compensation rate, which would be lower. In this case, the net surplus compensation calculation would actually be higher because that value is about 4 cents, 5 cents, maybe. If we do that calculation for customers, give it to them at the net surplus compensation, don't take back the credits that we already issued them from EEC, then they're sort of getting a little bit of extra credit. We're also suggesting that we add a penny to that net surplus compensation rate. So for whatever PG&E is going to give for net surplus compensation, we would add an extra penny on top of it. So if PG&E's rate is 4 cents, we would do 5 cents. PG&E's rate is 6 cents, we'd do 7. If it's 3, we'd do 4. So that's what we're looking to do to be a little bit more incentive for customers that have excess production. And this is mostly for, I think, in my opinion, I'm looking at this for mostly the customers that are expiring out of their NEM 1 tariff. They likely don't have batteries. They've got older systems. Maybe they're generating extra, maybe they're not, but they've been experiencing a retail credit for their solar system from the beginning. And now this transition to the solar billing plan program is going to be very different for them. And so this is a little bit maybe softer landing is how I'm looking at it. Yes.
So customer doesn't have a battery.
Yeah.
And they have solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
Under the net metering arrangement, they basically, whatever they used during the time that they were generating, they netted out their use against their export back to the grid, right?
Yeah.
To the extent that they generated more electricity than they used, then the net was exported to the grid. Under the new system, will they be charged? Will they be paid just this reduced rate for that net export? Or will they be charged the retail rate for whatever they use, and they'll get this reduced rate for what they generate?
So both to a degree. So what you're generating off your solar system, first you use at your house. Use that at your house first. So that's, you can think of that as a retail
So that's
value.
essentially free.
Yeah,
You're not paying PG&E for what you're using if it's the amount that you're pulling off.
right. Yeah. And so you can think of that as you're still getting a retail credit for every kilowatt hour that you produce from your solar system that you use at your house, you're still getting a retail credit for that. It's just when that kilowatt hours leaves your house and goes back to the grid, now you're not going to get a retail credit for that anymore. Now you're going to get this EEC credit for those kilowatt hours that you're pushing back out to the grid. That's the big difference between the old net metering program and solar billing plan, because you used to get it.
Purpose of
Yeah.
that is to convince those customers to get batteries.
Yes, to encourage.
And then use it when during the peak hours. So, and if it's more than they need to use, then they'd export it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get the high price.
Yeah. Yeah. The structure of the tariff is meant to discourage exporting excess kilowatt hours, especially in the middle of the day. Because we have too many on the grid right now of solar kilowatt hours in the middle of the day throughout the state. And to encourage people to either just use that energy at home, or if you have a battery, store it in the battery. And if you're going to export during that peak time. That's when the credits are a little bit higher.
Yes.
I have a question. Is now an okay?
Sure.
Yeah, now's
Sure.
a good time because she's gone through a fair amount. She's got more.
Yeah.
But I think if there's questions, we should take them now.
So my question is not as technical.
Sure.
I'm trying to understand it, but not at the technical level. Your question was very technical. Mine is more kind of maybe emotional and bigger picture, like
Yeah.
maybe higher up looking down at the forest. So tell me, this is what I heard was that, so these new rules are making it so that homeowners with solar, now they're not going to get as much back in that April thing, where before they maybe got.
For new people that are new to installing a solar system. So everyone who has a solar system right now, who still has an active interconnection agreement, nothing is changing for them. Nothing is changing for about 23,000 of our solar customers. Nothing's changing for them. This is only going to apply for customers who submit a new interconnection application after April 15th of 2023, and people who've had a solar system now that's more than 20 years old, because your original interconnection agreement that you signed with PG&E was a 20-year agreement. So people that had solar systems installed like 1999 to 2003, roughly, that's about, when stuff started. Those people are going to start transitioning over to this new program because they've spent more than 20 years on their original agreement.
So okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a really good clarification. So then again, getting really high up in the air and just looking down macrocosmically. So what I'm hearing you say is that the billing structure has changed and PCE has to decide how are they going to adapt their billing for their customers, thinking about how PG&E is doing their billing.
Yeah.
And what I heard you say was when we try to, charge our customers the way we do, we found out it was so complex comparing it to the PG&E bill that no one would understand it. So what we decided to do instead was give our customers a little bit more than PG&E would, like
Yes.
1 cent. So if it's 6 cents, it's 7 cents. But overall, it's less of a good deal.
Yeah, I would say that it's totally fair to say that the net surplus or the solar billing plan program, from a customer perspective, like a new customer installing your solar system, it is less generous than the NEM 2.0 program.
And I understand it's a technical reason, all this about the time of day and the value of the solar and storing it. And so I understand there's technical reasons. It's not random that PG&E is doing it that way and that policymakers are doing that way. But I'm just wondering, I just posed this question for PCE, which is that what we do we want to keep it as profitable for individuals anyway?
Yeah, so it's a fair question. And it's going to be hard. I'm going to do my best to explain this to you in a way that is not super technical. Unfortunately, it's a very wonky situation. We only control a small portion of the energy charges on a customer's bill. And so if these new customers that are going to be installing a solar system, they are going to be subject to the rules and the policies that the state has implemented for the investor and utility that's going to apply to a large portion of their electric bill anyways. And so even if we did nothing on our side of the bill, if we tried to keep it the same, we could, increase the value a little bit, but realistically, it would be insignificant to it would be insignificant overall in the value of the system. It's not going to move the needle in terms of making someone make a decision to install a solar system or not. The industry is not going to model for a different price structure that we have, especially because it would be different. It's not even different price structure. It's a different billing model than the the investor and utilities have. And so it would, when someone's making a decision, they're not even actually going to be presented with, oh, well, since you live in San Mateo County or you're served by Peninsula Clean Energy, actually you would get, 4% more total value, in the compensation versus since you're, if you didn't live in San Mateo County, like a salesperson's actually not going to do that math for somebody. So,
And
yeah.
it's too negligible.
Yeah.
I think in terms of customer impact. We had this conversation,
Yeah.
this very question. So it's a great question to try and figure out, should we sort of follow suit here? And Leslie is right and accurate that we looked at that to say it's so complex and the impact of not sort of following in this direction is negligible and frankly increases customer confusion. So she'll say more about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
You've answered my question and I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Sure.
More questions? Yes.
So have we looked at maybe adding, clearly this whole program sort of stay on the consumer side to make the pricing when we got the that you can propose and you what are retail rates you like 40 or 50 cents versus you're getting back 4 cents. So have we thought about basically the rebate of the batteries as a way of sort of getting back to
Yeah.
sort of a reasonable system?
No, that is a conversation that Raphael and Peter and I have had. And that's part of the work we want to do this year in starting this program and getting it implemented is to look at and what we can do that might be a better driver for that thing. Like, is it a direct rebate for batteries? Is there something else that we can incentivize that helps get people over the line, for these programs and to do this, do these projects in a way that also aligns with how we would like them to operate them, right? Is it an incentive for a battery? And then you're also signing up for our DER program so that we can, have some say in, offsetting the usage or something of that nature. And that's some of the stuff we're still working out. Some of the other CCAs are asking that same question, and they are looking to potentially do some programmatic things, but they're still sort of studying it a bit. No one's coming out the door right now saying we're 100% doing, $1,000 in battery incentives, which is what we want to do. We want to take a look at it over this next year, talk to our partners about that, and figure out what is the best way for us to go forward and make some adjustments to make it what we would like it to be and what our customers would like it to be. Yeah.
Do we have any way of measuring people the additional cost of batteries? Because from the 1 year, we're trying to evaluate in that year, we have any way of measuring any?
Yeah, so let me just go up here for a little bit on applications here. So this is some data right now that we have on that we got from PG&E. So currently, so there was a ton of applications that were submitted before the April 14th deadline. Like in the 5 months leading up to that deadline, there was like 18 months worth of applications submitted to PG&E that they processed. So roughly like 55,000 interconnection applications came in that last, 5 months. We've got right now in San Mateo County, like 2,500 or so customers that are going to be, or they said they're going to be installing a solar system on their home in under that older program, that NEM2 program, over the next few years. Currently in flight under the new program solar billing plan, we have 324 in San Mateo County, about 40 in Los Banos. There's a higher percentage in Los Banos, primarily because there's actually more new home construction happening in Los Banos, and there's a state mandate around solar on new homes. So new home construction will have solar systems installed throughout the state regardless. A lot of them probably aren't going to have batteries though, which is another thing we want to tackle, because there is less of an incentive for a developer to make sure that there's a battery installed with the system, because they don't care about the operating cost of it after they're doing it. They're just meeting the requirements. So that's part of the things that we want to look into about incentivizing going forward. But the sales of the new systems right now, to be honest, are very low, mostly because the installers are just trying to now deliver on the 50,000 systems that they sold in the 3 months, 3 to 4 months before the rules, sort of the new rule went into effect. So there is going to be some measure of lower installations. What they are, we don't know yet. This is something that everybody is still trying to understand what the impact is going to be. And the models for selling these new systems are still very new, because this whole program is very new and it actually hasn't taken effect yet. No bills have been generated yet. They're supposed to start December 15th, which I'm not even sure that date's going to hold. But that's the date that is on the record right now for starting this. And so we'll learn more as this thing gets implemented. There's a lot of things that we don't know that we think are going to happen or that we think will come out of this, but there's just a lot of learning to do as this gets implemented, to be honest.
So is there some thought if these numbers are relatively small, but just going ahead, maybe putting a cap on it, just to see whether what kind of uptake you get?
I think that I don't know what I don't think we had it in our programs budget this year to do that, and so that is part of what we're sort of exploring. There could be some money out there to do it, but we also then have to develop a program to do it, which takes 4 or 5 months to do. So when I say a year, I don't necessarily mean like a year from today. It could be in our next program year. So it could be starting in July, but these are conversations that we need to have in more depth with the programs team as well. Sorry,
Just to clarify, the big issue is what we do about batteries. That's a programmatic issue that's going to take a lot of work. And the staff is absolutely thinking about that. I mean, we tried it last year with Sunrun, didn't work very well. This has motivated us to do more, and that's the big issue. But if you look at those numbers on the two charts that we had up there, the chart on the left is 123 installations under this new program. That's minuscule compared to the 2451 installations that need to happen at the same time. And, they have 2.5 more years to get those installations done, and they still get the NEM2 benefit. So there's uncertainty because it's new, but there's absolute certainty that the return for those that do it on the new program is far less than on the old program.
Yeah, I think I was a little concerned about the quality of those panels. I mean, if you have a new house and you're forced to put solar on, and then and I totally take your point that developers are gonna say, great, check that box. The smallest number of panels, no
Yeah.
batteries, we're out of here.
Yeah.
So I hear you. I just,
But we need to develop the program and sort of the silver lining in that is that batteries have been very expensive. And the issue of car batteries is a really big unknown that's out there. I mean, it costs, you can get a car with a battery for about the same price you can get a battery. So why not get transportation as the side benefit? But there's not yet the technology to really utilize those batteries to support your home. So that's coming, but it's not here yet.
yes, that home to vehicle stuff, has that been approved yet?
It's
happening.
developing, and there's a couple cars that have it, but it's developing.
Thank you.
And I'll just quickly add, and then we should move on because we have a long
Yeah, I'll,
agenda. There is money in the budget this year for residential battery storage. And we're developing a
Okay,
new
good.
set of partnerships to get that out the door. So that is coming. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah, so real quick. So one other thing, I sort of glossed over this, but there is a process that the investor-owned utilities are doing and a couple of CCs are doing where they're going to do this clawback mechanism where they're gonna take back, some amount of money. If somebody is a net exporter for the year, they're gonna take back some of that EEC credit and then like recalculate the net surplus compensation and then give them the difference. We're not gonna do that. We're just gonna give everybody the net surplus compensation. So it's complicated. It's a complicated calculation and I don't think it's worthwhile to do. Okay, so really, so what we're talking about here again is this is a rolling out of this policy as an initial implementation. Really take this year as a sort of a learning phase. There's a lot of work to do still in the back end for implementation to make sure we get the billing correctly. Working with PG&E in our data manager, Calpine with that. The sort of tweaks that we've proposed, we think are good sort of places for us to add a little bit of incentive. This is only going to apply to a small number of customers in this initial couple years. The roll off of the legacy customers, about 150, 200 customers there. And then we've got another 100-ish, 150 so customers in the new program. So this is going to be a good sort of size test group of people to take a look at. But most of our customers are in a 20-year agreement still with PG&E. So that we don't really actually start to see a lot of legacy customers roll off until around 2007, 2008. So 2027, 2028 is when we start to see a larger number of people come off of their legacy agreement. We looked at this chart already. This is just basically a little map of what we're looking at in terms of where we think people are going to come over into this new program from the legacy NEM 1 program. And again, so we're just looking at this to be sort of our intro. This is not a set in stone for life policy. It can be readjusted and enhanced as we go forward, as we learn more. And we are still providing a little bit of extra value to folks where we think we can do that, incorporate that in a nice way. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Unless you have any other questions, I'm trying to wrap it up. Sure.
We're proposing is that we add a penny to the energy export credit.
Yeah,
and that will, what that will do is that will give our customers who generate more power from solar panels than they consume over the 12 months.
over the 12 months.
It'll give them a 1 penny benefit on top of what the PG&E rate would be for that excess power.
Yeah, so it's not a 1 penny adder to the energy export credit. It's a 1 penny adder to the net surplus compensation rate. So it's that calculation that would happen at the end of the 12 months.
Okay.
So if you are a net exporter, so you push out kilowatt hours throughout the whole year, you're always generating extra. Right now, what happens, you get to the end of the year and we send you a check for that whatever the retail credit is there.
So
Yeah,
if we wanted to, we could choose to add a penny to the energy export credit, which would be a much more significant thing for
it'd be
us.
very expensive, yes.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
don't know that we've looked at that.
We have not modeled it because we actually, to be honest, cannot model it because we do not have this data. We do not get this data yet in the format that, this is a totally new way of getting data from our customers. We actually don't get this granular interval data from PG&E right now. We get block data on a billing
there's a very
cycle.
small number of customers, but after
We could take a look. Yeah, once we start getting this data and we actually start looking at it and we see how it performs in our service territory, that could be a conversation to have. Yeah, that we want to add it to the EEC value. Sure. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, let me see if, I think that's no questions, but let me see if there's any public comment. Is there any public comment on this? I don't see any public comment in the room. I don't see any public comment online. I'll close public comment. This is an action item,
This is an action item.
so we need a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And second, okay. And,
Just so I'm clear, what is the motion here? What are we approving?
okay,
Is this the penny?
no.
It's the whole policy. It was attached into the memo. So the policy is essentially that we are going to roughly mirror PG&E's solar billing plan with these couple of tweaks where we're going to add a penny to the net surplus compensation calculation for customers who do that, who need that if they overgenerate for the year. And we're also not going to do that clawback. But otherwise, we're going to adopt the EEC rates that PG&E is going to publish. And we're going to use that for the baseline for the compensation. But for customers who end up generating more over the whole year, we have a little bit extra that we're going to do for them.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Sure. Yeah.
It's also, there's a resolution in the packet, it's page 201 in the packet. You're approving the resolution, which then approves the 4-page policy that follows.
I'll just make a quick comment. I
Please.
just want to thank Leslie and staff for all your hard work. This is wonky, it is hard, and you're really patient, you explain it really well. And we heard about it through EC too, so it helps actually the second time around. But it's a lot of work, I can tell, so just want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the ride with us.
If anybody else has a comment, it's appropriate. Okay, no other comments. We've got a motion and a second. Do we do a roll call? Yes.
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 City. East Carolina.
Yeah.
City.
Yeah.
You were fading in and out. I think you said Hillsborough and it's yes.
I did, thank you. I will face the mic when I'm talking. Love Bannis,
Yes.
Menlo Park. Yes. Millbrae. Pacifica,
Yes.
Portola Valley,
Aye.
Redwood City,
Yes.
San Bruno,
Yes.
San Carlos,
Yes.
San Mateo,
Yes.
South San Francisco.
Yeah.
Woodside.
Yes.
Thank you, and the motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Next item on the agenda is an update on the Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Action Plan implementation.
Good evening, directors. I'm Kirsten Andrews Schwind, Senior Manager of Community Relations at Peninsula Clean Energy, and I'm happy to give you this update on the implementation of our Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Plan. And, all right, so again, the folks who were here last May will remember that you passed a very ambitious action plan to implement our DEI policy. And just remembering what was in the policy, which is now policy number 22. It's a very robust policy, but here's a key statement that we commit to making diversity, equity, accessibility, inclusion a priority during decision-making. So this is the policy that you passed about a year ago in October. So based on that policy and a gap analysis, including talking with members of the board, members of the staff, members of the community, members of community-based organizations, we worked with a consultant, GCAP, to develop a very robust implementation plan to implement that policy. And that was the plan that you approved in May. So this is a 6-month update. And that action plan has 43 total actions. So this is a major lift. I will be reporting out on about a quarter of those actions 6 months out. And I'll have a more complete update for you at the 1-year mark. All right, so diving in, there are 6 sections to the action plan. First one is organizational culture and commitment. The driving person here is the CEO. And the goal here is to advance and promote DEI within our workforce, business practices, policies, and programs. One of the actions, and there's a number of actions under each of these goals. So one of the actions was to appoint a DEI lead and form a staff council to oversee the implementation in all of the departments. So status complete. I've been appointed as the DEI lead for now. And we have a council with representatives from all of our departments that meets every 2 weeks. Another action for the CEO is to establish a DEI framework for goal setting and decision making. And this is a list of questions to ask before we produce organization goals, policies, programs, and decisions. And status there is in progress. We've drafted a framework based on input from staff, and we're currently doing final review with staff, and then we'll look forward to bringing that for review here as well. So I've got the little weight lifter there for the weights that we're still lifting. All right. Under human resources, we have a goal of creating a workforce that is more representative and inclusive of people of all backgrounds and providing equitable access to employment opportunities. And some of the actions there, including adding some revisions to our employee handbook that were recommended by our DEI consultant, and ensuring salary transparency, posting salary ranges in all of our job announcements and advertisements. And both those have been completed. Also, we have a requirement to have all our employees complete a DEI related training. This is the short version of this goal. The longer version actually suggests that board members and CAC members take the training as well, be optional, but we offer it to those groups. That is in progress. We did initial training with all staff about a year ago and all hands, and additional annual training courses are in development. For the energy programs team, the goal is to define energy equity and set goals and metrics for achieving it through our program, and to increase input and feedback from diverse communities to improve equity in programs. That's why I've got the listening ear there. Listen more to the community in terms of how we design our programs. One of the actions is to develop and finalize a worksheet template for community engagement in program development. So as we develop our programs, have the staff people go through an exercise of reaching out to key stakeholders in the community to get input. So that is in progress. The worksheet has been drafted and is in review. And then we are also working on engaging with community leaders and organizations in the early stages of program development. This is very actively in progress. We're doing 7 focus groups this fall. Actually, we've done a number of them already, 7 total, to get input on programs. We're doing them English, Spanish, and Mandarin Chinese in partnership with community-based organizations. So we're about halfway through our schedule. We've done 3 or 4, and the rest are scheduled through the end of the year. So getting a lot of great data input from our customers, and especially difficult to serve customers, low-income customers, renters, mobile home residents, the folks that we don't always hear from, but who have very relevant perspectives on how to better serve them. In marketing and account services, our goal is to improve accessibility of our customer service, energy supply and energy programs, especially among low-income, disadvantaged populations, and limited English proficiency groups. One of our actions is to ensure that our public website is visually accessible. That is complete. Our website is compliant with the Web Compliance Accessibility Guidelines 2.0. And we're going farther. We're sending a staff member to some training to learn how to make our website even more accessible to people with visual impairments. We're still developing the guidelines for our language and technology access. One of the reasons is because we're making them really robust. We're looking into if we can offer the program enrollment pathways completely in English, Spanish, or Mandarin Chinese, which involves a number of technologies that integrate with Salesforce. So there's some technology questions in there that we're researching. But meanwhile, we translated our outreach materials into Spanish and traditional Chinese. We offer outreach in Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Tagalog, and other languages, both through bilingual staff members and through partnerships with community-based organizations through our outreach grant program. And we are continuing to develop those robust guidelines. And frankly, we're putting some pressure on our partners at PG&E and the California Energy Commission to work with us to translate our required mailings that we work with them to do as well. For under vendor diversity and social responsibility, we want to make sure that our suppliers are environmentally conscious and have equitable business practices to the extent we can. And to establish a level playing field, providing opportunities and limiting barriers to equal participation for all vendors. And a really key action we have completed here, which is to add questions to our request for offers template for utility scale procurement. So this is where we spend about 90% of our money, is buying electricity. And so in our request for offers template, we ask questions about environmental stewardship, disadvantaged community outreach, workforce development, and responsible procurement and supplier diversity. And the answer to those questions count for 20% of the score when we are evaluating those new power purchase agreement proposals. In addition, we are working on developing and implementing a diverse subcontractor reporting system. So this is the subcontractors, the people who our contractors are contracting with, obviously, how diverse is that part of our money? Is the impact of that part of our spending. That is in progress. We're sending out a data request for subcontractor spending in January of 2024. In terms of stepping back and looking at challenges with the implementation of our very robust action plan, making time on our staff. I feel this acutely. I'm hiring for 2 positions on my team and doing this job. So it's something I'm passionate about, but I wish I had a little more time to do. But after I get those other 2 positions hired, we'll be able to move faster. And then also learning to make DEI an organizational priority per our policy is still a learning curve that we're on. That's still a lift that we're lifting. So as I mentioned, next steps will be that I will give a detailed report to you on, brace yourselves, all 43 of those actions in the spring at the 1-year mark. And that's what I've got.
Any questions? Yes, please, Sam.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Kirsten, for the report. The question on the annual training of staff that's been under development, is that being with the GCAP or that's being developed internally?
Yeah, that's a good question. GCAP gave us a draft training plan and outline as part of their their deliverables to us. So we've gotten an outline for them that we used to develop our training a year ago. We're still determining who the provider of our training will be.
So some might be in person, some might be video modules. We have new hires, so there's different audiences, so it's pretty multifaceted.
Any other questions? Is there any public comment on this issue? I don't see any public comment in the room. I don't see any public online, public comment online. I'll close public comment. Okay, thank you, Kirsten.
Great work. Nice
Really
job.
good, really nice. Next item on the agenda is the annual strategic plan update.
Order. Okay, so I'm going to introduce this topic. This is our annual performance update, if you will, against our 5-year strategic plan that runs from 2021 to 2025. Maybe it's 2020 to 2025. So we are right at about midpoint. As you know, we do this annually as a kind of a deeper dive and then a midpoint review at the spring executive committee. So we'll dive right in here. Just very briefly, a recap of adjustments since we last met. Sorry, that should say September 2022. Sorry about that. We updated community energy program targets last year to better reflect the market reality and the very real slowdown in uptake and scale through the pandemic. And so we moved a number of those metrics further down to be realistic and reflective. Good news, we are picking up speed on most of that. We clarified our decarbonization goal. We simply added 2045 to make it clear that our goal is to beat the state's mandate by 10 years. We added operational and customer data objectives. Last year for account services, we split it out from marketing and community relations, so it had its own section. We added some key tactics for regulatory and legislative, and most important, in June, just before Jan left, the board amended the 24/7 goal to consider a bifurcated approach, that we would deliver 100% renewable energy on an annual basis by 2025. So that will become our default standard product in 2025. And then by 2027, we would deliver 100% time coincident, 99%, excuse me, time coincident by 2027. That second part is under additional sort of validation and verification of assumptions by our power services team and the procurement subcommittee. And I think there's another meeting of that subcommittee here coming up pretty soon. So that's all part and parcel, and we'll be coming back to the board for an update. Just briefly, the organizational, there's 2 key priorities, as all of you are aware. So last year, when we bifurcated this, we don't, in our dashboard, we don't have a separate line item right now for the 24/7 time coincident. So in the top line, what you see is for our 100% annual goal, we are at 53.7% renewable. And Roy will be saying much more about this in terms of detail when he comes up. And then just in that second footnote down there, we wanted just to tell you that the hourly matching goal will now start in 2027, as mentioned. For reference, we were 46% time coincident in 2022 as an actual, and we estimate being 60% in 2025. We'll talk more about why. And it's under further discussion by the procurement subcommittee. In programs, you can see that year to date this year, we have reduced 38,100 metric tons greenhouse gas emissions. When you look at that on a cumulative basis over the last 4 years, it adds up to about 103 metric tons, and more to come as we go. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over. Andy Stern, I believe, is with us, and I do want to call you out, Andy, and say thank you. He just came back from a trip over in Europe literally 2 hours ago and is here at this meeting. So extra shout out to you, Andy, and I will, if you guys would advance the slide. Are you with us, Andy?
I am.
Okay. Brianna, can you go to the next slide? Okay, there you go, Andy.
Sure. Days cash on hand is how we measure how much cash we have relative to our expense levels. As you all know, and why we're in the process of the surplus funds project is because we ended the year fiscal year 23 at 319, well above our 2025 target of 231. And that number will likely drop some once we complete the surplus funds discussion. Credit ratings. We also, as you know from a prior meeting, we were given an A- rating from Standard & Poor's at their last rating in a few months ago. And in addition, Moody's upgraded its rating on PCE from a Baa2 level to a Baa1 level. That's not quite yet at our single A level, although A- is single A. But I think our target was to be at an A level without the minus. So that's we're still seeking that over time. Our change in that position, which is an annual measure, we had, as you can see, a loss in the 2 prior years. They were shown as green because they were, each of them, even though they were a loss, were less loss than we budgeted. So all 3 of those years were positive variances relative to our budgeted levels. And the level of 139 million positive in fiscal year 23, which you approved the audited financials earlier this evening, was significant. When we put this 2025 target together, we just wanted it to be positive, but we're well ahead of that. Investment performance is still under review. The last couple of years have been quite challenging for fixed income investments, and we had a loss in the fiscal year 22 timeframe. We had a slight gain, if my understanding is correct, in the fiscal year 23, but not at the level that we would have expected, and not at the level that fixed income investments have made and returned over the last 15, 20, 25 years. So the last couple of years have been quite challenging in fixed income investments. The average cost of energy, our 2025 target was set a few years ago at $62.73. We were below that in the prior 3 years, but the fiscal year 23 costs for energy was significantly higher. It was again a very challenging year for costs. Natural gas prices were quite high, energy prices were high, but because of even though those costs were high and higher than we budgeted, our revenues were significantly higher than we expected, which contributed to the change in that position.
Great.
Is there another slide, Sean?
There is. I'm trying to move it. Maybe it's under Brianna. Brianna?
You just got to point it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I have it.
You know, I think these are a little bit out of sequence. The strategic plan, goal, and objectives, and I'm going to speak this to all of you guys. I think we should kick off with just a quick recap of this before you get into your update. Okay. Andy, go ahead. Sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
Sure. The strategic plan goals were to be run a positive and responsible financial organization with good fiscal strategies. Recapping the major objectives, which is to strengthen and maintain PC's fiscal health, implement financial controls and policies that meet or exceed best practices, and practice strategies that ensure long-term financial sustainability. I think we're doing, as an organization, have done quite well on all those, but that we'll talk about that in a second. The mid-year highlights, the mid-year financial performance was definitely on track. We had a very healthy operating surplus, and we've continued conservative practices and prudent practices. A few months ago, or at least a couple of months ago, this board approved a revisit and revise of our invoice and approval processes and our contract approval processes and our bill payment processes to ensure separation of duties so that no one person is inputting and approving expenses and or invoices, and then also releasing payments and wires. Especially, we have a 3-level process for that, where one person sets up wires, another person approves those wires, and a third person, usually Sean, is the one who releases those wires. There's no foolproof way to avoid fraud or in any place, in any organization, but we're doing all that we can to minimize the likelihood of that and employing good financial strategies on that. Upcoming priorities is to confirm a permanent CEO or CFO, sorry, and add one position in finance, probably focused around rate making. We are looking to expand the CFO to potentially oversee risk management and the IT and data functions. The IT and data functions was under the CFO about 1.5 years ago, and looking to reconsolidate that. We will complete the cost of service study in the coming couple of 3 months. We have some early indications, although we're not really prepared to talk about it yet. And then we'll evaluate a next step for how and if we want to implement an actual cost of service rate making strategy. And then the fourth is to consider prepay PPA options. We had some discussion about this at the executive committee and the finance committee 4 or 5 months ago. And we need to have, we intend to have a deep dive into how that might benefit PCE in saving long-term energy costs.
Okay, any questions? Yeah.
Could you please elaborate on the stewardship update, the difference from 2023 year to date and the 2025 target with the average cost of energy going down?
Yeah, so it's not that we expect it to go down. That one more page. Back one more. Even one more, I think, from here, if I understood the question correctly. Yep, they're talking about this from $73 to $63, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So when that 2025 target was set, when we first did the strategic plan, so we anticipated or hoped that by 2025 we would be able to stabilize energy costs at the $62.73, which was our 5-year plan at that point. And we would still like to get prices to be at that level and manage our costs and PPAs and everything at that level. However, that's proved quite challenging in the interim year, or the last year, as energy costs have gone back up. So that it's not a projection to say that this 2025 target is projected to be at $62 and that we have a strategy for how to do that. It was a long-term projection, and this is a measurement against that original long-term target.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, we're going to move on to Roy Zhu, Director of Power Resources.
Good evening, Roy Shu, Director of Power Resources.
First time presenting, a little nervous.
I always do a great job. Don't be.
So I'll start with this slide with Power Resources objectives. They're listed, but actually they're just one. The objective is deliver 100% renewable energy annually by 2025 and on a 99% time constant basis by 2027. The second objective is really how to achieve the first objective: secure sufficient, low cost, clean source electricity that keep the energy's priorities while ensuring reliability and meeting grid independence. And the four objectives underneath it sort of outlines each operational functional areas of Power Resources to try to help meet that goal. Go back a slide to talk about this KPI in your Power Resources, and as you can see, we are mostly green on the cells in terms of meeting the ECO Plus and ECO 100 annual renewable content percentage and emission factor. So I will point out that there is a slight increase on the second row for ECO Plus emission factor from 9 pounds per megawatt hour to 13 pounds per megawatt hour. That's because we added Heber 2, which is the geothermal resource to the portfolio starting January 2023. And geothermal resource, some of them do come with a little bit of emissions, and so that has a little bit. But we do expect to meet the 2025 target of 16 pounds per megawatt hour, way below that, because there are many reasons. So we have very conservative assumptions on emission factors, and also some of our projects are delayed. But this is a very good number compared to the state average for 2022, which is over 400 pounds per megawatt hour. It's pretty great. One thing I'll highlight on this slide is the last row, which is this new capacity benchmark that we established for ourselves, which is to promote new build outs on the grid. And we're challenged in this row, not because we're not procuring enough new resources. To the contrary, we're buying a lot of new resources, but we're not giving ourselves credit for new storage resources that we're bringing on board. That's because of the way that it's measured. It's measured by percentage of load served by new resources, and storage resources not increasing the generation, they're shifting the generation. So we're not giving ourselves credit for that. So staff is looking at ways to adjust measurement of this metric and present the new measurement method to the board next time we bring this update. Just for reference, we are going to bring 4 projects online, all new projects online next year. 2 solar plus storage projects and 2 standalone storage projects. But we are heavily preparing. So some highlights for calendar year 2023. So on the planning side, we did publish the 24/7 white paper part 2 in January. And the paper demonstrated how meeting time constant renewable target is achievable. And in June, the board adopted the revised target of meeting the 99% time constant target by 2027. And that was because due to changing market conditions, there's just not that many available resources for the contract prior to 2026. So the 2025 goal was challenged. And by pushing it out by 2 years, we believe there will be a more optimal resource that we can contract to our goal. But we're, as Sean mentioned earlier, we are continuously refining the metrics that we're using, the assumptions we're using to meet this goal and address the over procurement issue in our analysis, and to try to meet this goal in a more risk cautious way, and continue to work with the board to reflect that. On the procurement side, we spend a substantial amount of time in both long-term procurement and short-term. The long-term procurement, we released 2 RFPs for contracts early this year, and we received and evaluated over 100 proposals. And we were at one time negotiating 18 contracts at a time. I don't even know how we did it. And but we were successful in contracting with 2 projects early this year. Lockhart, the standalone storage project, 45 megawatts. that project is going to come online next year to help us meet our MTR requirement. And then the Senzilla Wind Project, which is the largest procurement PC has done to date. We have 20 megawatts export wind that's going to come through California with the Senzilla transmission line. So that's a significant contract, will contribute to 13% of DC's load when it comes online in 2026. For short-term transactions, we've done a few hedging solicitations and the transactions associated with that, but the most important accomplishment on the short-term transactions is meeting the 2023 month ahead resource adequacy compliance obligations and 2024's year ahead resource adequacy requirements. And we've conducted close to 100 resource adequacy transactions as 3 to 4 quarters in a very tight supply market, very high price. But we were able to complete these compliance requirements to avoid penalties from the PUC and also solidify our credibility with the big agencies. So that's quite an accomplishment. It's not an easy task. And on the operations side, I'll speak to the number of hiring that was accomplished in calendar year 2023. We hired a director of power resource, which is myself. And we hired 2 power resource specialists to support the back office and then we hired 1 power resource analyst to support planning and analytics. Currently recruiting a power resource manager for market operations. And we also onboarded 3 interns, extending the summer internship in December. And the reason we're making all these hires is because we're slowly transitioning from a procurement heavy mode to a balanced procurement and operations. And that's needed because a lot of the resources that we procured in the past years are slowly coming online, and we need more staff to manage the contracts, to settle the energy transactions, and it's just becomes an operational function more than just buying. So so once the last hire is completed, we'll have doubling size relative for size last year in power resources and providing the much needed redundancy staff coverage for our operation. And at the same time, we're updating our energy risk management policy, which is in the final stage, and we expect to bring it to board either end of this year or beginning of next year for approval. We also complete our solicitation for new scheduling coordinator, which we will bring the contract to the board in November next month. So talk about challenges, and there are many. There's a laundry list of them. I just summarized 4 of them here. The first one is, as I mentioned before, there are just not a lot of renewable projects with near-term service dates, and let alone finding a project with a desirable growth generation profile that fits our portfolio. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is the interconnection bottleneck, the ISO. There's the rising interest rate that's impacting project financing. There's a supply chain issue, labor shortage, all of that things excuses that developers have brought to our attention. The second one is the elevated market price across the board of all products, resource adequacy, renewable energy credits. They're all at historical heights pricing, and that contributes to a higher PPA pricing too, as a level of product. That includes RA, REX, and energy. So everything has elevated in price. And the third one is once with all the projects that we contracted, we're experiencing delays on reaching commercial operation. And that's challenging because we rely on these projects to meet compliance. And if they're late, then we have to either find a replacement project or we'll be some penalties. So speaking of compliance, the last bullet point is we have spent a substantial amount of time on procurement to be compliant on RA, to be compliant on MTR. So it sort of limits our ability, autonomy and opportunity to be creative in our procurement because we just have to procure to be compliant. So that is a challenge in itself. I don't know if I have a solution for that, but other than continue to procure. So upcoming priorities. On the planning and procurement side, we continue to work with the board to refine the 24/7 strategy, mostly to resolve the excess procurement issue. And if there, first to limit the amount of excess procurement we'll have. And then if we do have excess procurement and to have a better strategy in selling and disposing the excess energy to minimize costs and risk. Continue to build a diverse and cost-effective resource portfolio. We continue to sign up more projects. And then to minimize RA cost exposure by proactive forward planning, meaning that we look out further in advance in the future years, buy ahead if it's cost effective to do so. So better planning for RA. And on the operations side, as I mentioned, we're bringing on board a market operations manager, and it's a critical position to be collaborating with the new scheduling coordinator to develop market strategy for our upcoming storage resources. And we need to develop a resilient back office team to support contract administration and settlements. There'll be a lot of projects coming online. There'll be a lot more work, especially selling energy storage contracts, very involved and very complicated. And then the last one is to set up a middle office with AKA risk management function. So there will be a new risk management policy. There will be a risk oversight committee being established to serve as a checks and balance on procurement activities. So those are the upcoming priorities. That's my last slide. Happy to take any questions.
Question?
Thank you. Great presentation, really good work. I'm curious, the staff collaboration, as you know, I think when we first started, we were very siloed in how we analyzed our PPAs, right? They were like, you got assigned one, you got assigned one. And now you guys seem to be collaborating a little more, like there's more people looking at each individual contract, adding thoughts, and is the process getting more robust with the staffing increases?
Yes, well, so there is the evaluating the project proposals when they come in. So that has not changed. We have a robust process to evaluate different elements of the project, including developer qualification, their interconnection process, financing ability. But the staffing that we're increasing back office is to manage projects that are coming online.
Okay.
As they generate energy and participate in the market, there will be more settlement activities.
And negotiating contracts.
Yeah, we'll be monitoring the contractual
okay.
terms. Yes. So once we sign the contract, put it aside for a couple of years as the project getting developed. And then once the project is built, we'll probably forget half the terms in the contract at that time. And then you need staff to go in and report the contract terms, making sure performance are met, there are guarantees in the contract. If they don't meet, you can penalize them. So we need people to kind of enforce the contract and make sure they are meeting why we contracted them in the first place, is to maximize the value of these resources for us.
Any other question?
Thank you, Roy. Next up is going to be Philip Kobernick, who you heard from earlier. Rafael Reyes is traveling out of the country, and so Philip is deputy stepping up tonight. Thank you.
That's your pinch hitter today.
Pinch hitter.
Right. So starting with our community energy programs strategic plan. So essentially we have two, which is to help our community reduce transportation and building emissions to zero by 2035. It's our first and most important goal. And then to implement robust energy programs that do those GHG emissions reductions, align clean energy supply and demand, and provide community benefits. And we're doing that through our signature energy programs, distributed energy resources, community benefits, of course, and innovation and scaling beyond just our community territory. Okay, so going backwards here, this is our board dashboard, which really reflects kind of ramping up across the board this year. There's a few things that I want to highlight in particular. One of them is our growth in our appliance rebate program, that 1895 number. So what this represents is we've helped the community electrify nearly 2,000 electric appliances, and that exceeds our 2025 target 2 years early. So we've really had explosive growth in electric appliances, which is really a great thing, and we're seeing a lot of growth there. A couple more things to highlight here are some of the ones in yellow. So EV charging, we've installed by now a little over 600 EV charging stations so far, but there's a lot in development. We have about 3,000 or so that are being developed right now, either in the design phase or in the near construction phase. So there's a ton of charging that's coming in addition to the 600 that we've already done. And for local resources, you'll see we've installed 6.9 megawatts already, but there's also a bunch coming, about 18 megawatts in the Gov PV pipeline. And I'll mention it later more in a bit, but our Gov PV phase 1 is in the implementation phase. Gov PV 2 is out to bid right now. The bid's due in a couple of weeks. Okay, 1 second here. There you go. So some of our recent highlights of this year, I want to mention again, the tremendous growth we're seeing our buildings electrification side, particularly gas HVAC systems are going out the door. Really popular thing that people are replacing. So a lot of growth there, which is really great to see. Our loan program this is our 0% loan program. Again, really popular. We have over $2 million reserved as part of our 0% loan program. And our low income home upgrade program is now working with over 200 homes. And we have 5 whole home electrification pilots as part of that. And those will be done in about a month or so from now, but they're actively being moved. For EV charging, I'm really proud, it's my part of the house. I'm really proud of what we're doing here, demonstrating innovation in bringing down costs for EV charging. Our average cost for chargers being installed through our program are $4,000 a port, which is over 4 times cheaper than PG&E's current average. We're focusing on multifamily housing, which is a very high need segment and historically very difficult segment to serve. Most other state programs are multifamily is a much smaller component of their overall portfolio. And our EV managed charging pilot is in progress right now. We have almost 700 people enrolled in our pilot. Bringing that to program will be a big priority. Okay, and for our distributed energy resources, as I mentioned, Gov PV is moving to implementation. We have 3 sites that are nearly completed right now, just waiting for final sign off on PG&E. Including the Brisbane Mission Blue Center, which is that photo. I know it's a little small on the screen, but that's the ribbon cutting that happened a few weeks ago. One of our GovPV 1 ground sites, and GovPV 2 is in progress right now. There's an RFP that is open, bids due in a couple of weeks, and that's for about 30 or so sites in addition. Okay, some of our challenges, no surprise here, the high cost of electricity is a tremendous barrier to electrification, adversely impacting economics, electrification benefits. To provide a framework for this, if you are charging your car or your battery or using other electric appliances at 54 cents a kilowatt hour, which is the peak rate on TOUC, our most common home residential rate, that's equivalent to putting gas in your car at $5.40 a gallon. So that really impacts the economics for folks. It's a major challenge. Of course, another one is power outages for folks that have experienced that or worried about experiencing that. It's another major barrier. Bandwidth on our team, we're doing a lot, and we've just hired a new analyst, which we're very excited about. But we have a lot of things firing on all cylinders, programs team, and we have a lot to do in 2020. And then finally, rising costs and inflation. We've seen some calming and cooling of the market, which is great. I'll use used cars as an example. The price of used cars are coming down. Last I saw is about 30% year over year, but they're still higher than they were pre-pandemic. It's still hard to buy cars right So if you're asking folks to switch to electrics, it's still a challenge. Okay, some of the priorities here. Flip on to make sure. Okay, so overall, we're expecting much higher transaction volume in 2024 as our programs continue to ramp up across the board. We're also expecting more complex customer interactions, especially on the building electrification side of things. People electrifying more complicated parts of their homes, which is great. But all this means that we're going to have deeper customer service, customer interactions with folks at a much deeper level. So making sure that we're broadening our customer-centric delivery and focus is going to be a really important part of that. And of course, continuing to execute at high quality and then ramping up all of our programs are other major focuses overall. For buildings, the biggest launch next year is going to be our turnkey building electrification program. In 2024, that's going to be a huge launch for us next year, which will include turnkey services. We're exploring bringing an in-house customer service center, again, in support of the expected volume of customer interactions that we expect to see next year. People calling us, should I go with this ducted or ductless system, you know, when I'm switching, things like those types of questions we're going to be expecting in significant volume. For distributed resources, as I mentioned, GovPV2 to bid now. We are looking at a solar and storage project to answer an earlier question from earlier on today. Peter Levitt is our head of distributed energy resources and is in early ideation with our CAC right now, but that is a big priority for next year. We're in the early stages of figuring it out. And finally, on transportation, in addition to just ramping up everything for charging and everything else there, we will be moving our managed charging pilot to full-on managed charging program next year, which will be a big effort on the EV side of things. And that is it for me.
Questions? Yeah.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I noticed, I was a little surprised to see power outages as a challenge. Of course, in the last couple of years, we've had many outages. But I guess like maybe, you know, my layman's sense on a high level is that we haven't had like, you know, the same kind of PG&E induced power outages like in our county maybe as we've had over the last few years. And I'm wondering if you, if I missed other outages that were big this year and that you foresee, you know, could this be getting better going forward?
Oh, so we certainly hope so.
Yeah.
You know, we've been fortunate in that we've had it's been a while since we've had major multi-day PSPS events. Yeah. But this last winter storm season, many customers did experience, when we're talking not only multi-hour, but sometimes multi-day outages because of the winter storms.
Some people in this room even.
Yeah, there you go. So they are.
Right.
That does present major challenges, right? So now we're saying, well, if folks were cooking on a gas system, even though it's unhealthy, you're not able to vent when your power is off, and there's challenges to even igniting some of those gas systems now. It's a worry for customers. And of course, there's real and perceived worries as people switch to electric. Thank you very much.
Any other question?
Thank you, Philip.
Okay, thank you for it.
Next up is Gwen Rose, our Director of Marketing and Community Relations. Thank you, Gwen.
Starting with our strategic plan, goals, and objectives. So our goal is to develop a strong brand reputation that drives participation in our programs and ensures customer satisfaction and retention. And then our objectives under that brand reputation. So we want to elevate Peninsula Clean Energy's brand reputation as a trusted leader in the community and the industry. And for engagement, we want to educate and engage stakeholders in order to gather input, inspire action, and drive program participation. Going back to our board dashboard, some of these metrics are shared with the account services team, separated out, but I want to focus on our aided awareness, which is at risk right now. Our goal there is to, by 2025, have 60% brand awareness And we measure this annually through the annual survey. I presented on the results in August, and we are currently at 41%. That's been flat for the last few years, fairly flat. And then on favorability, our target is 8% favorable, and we're currently at 58%. So we have been, over the last few years, increasing our email and online engagement with owned channels, and that has had a positive impact. But we're gonna need to do more, and I'll talk about that in our upcoming priorities. And then, you know, I'll mention for residential programs, we have Medium here for our residential engagement, but I would actually say we're creeping up to like a light green. And over the next year, with the programs that Philip is talking about, I think we're gonna see a lot. We're gonna have a much better improved ability to engage our residential customers in a much deeper manner. So for our highlights, you know, the marketing and outreach team has the really nice job of getting to celebrate a lot of our wins. This team does a lot of very cool things, from Power Resources, doing innovative win projects and programs. And so it's nice we get to celebrate those wins. We've done, you know, 16 press releases. We've been covered in 60 articles, done 4 podcasts. You know, the 24/7 white paper featured in Bloomberg, so some, you know, some real exposure being had. And then we're asked to present at conferences and webinars on electrification, EV charging, 24/7 renewables. So there's a lot of great thought leadership happening at the national and the state level, as well as the local level. Community relations, Kirsten, Vanessa doing amazing things. 85 community events, deep interactions with 3,000 customers. And we're working on expanding that outreach and leveraging those through our work with community-based organizations. I mentioned celebrating electrification successes. So we got to do the ribbon cutting with Brisbane, which was really fun. Looking forward to doing more of those ribbon cuttings and celebrating. So there's those go online. Doing lots of support educational initiatives, green awareness, field trips, career training, working with teachers on workshops, all kinds of great things happening there. Our youth climate ambassadors. And then Kirsten mentioned conducting focus groups with CBOs. So continuing to make sure that we're listening to the community and bringing that back into the organization. And then our promotional efforts through our digital media. So we're at 41,000 online visitors to the site, a lot of attention on the all electric content. And you know, program successes, in some ways, we like to think that we're helping them. So upcoming priorities, you know, a strong brand is going to be really important for us to meeting our goals to really get people to decarbonize. And so, you know, you saw that 41% awareness. We want to really focus on what is our brand strategy so that we get from that 41% to that 60%. How do we, you know, really establish the relationship, build the trust, and get the messages out so that we can inspire that action and change. So we right now have a marketing RFP that's been released. We get responses next week. We bring the, you know, make a selection over the next month and bring that back in December so that we can really hit the ground running in January and figure out what that brand strategy is, how we're going to get the message out in various channels, and really excited about that. We'll also have additional resources to help with the program launches. These are going to be really exciting programs. They manage the charging and building electrification, and we want to make sure we're getting the right messages to the customers in the ways that excite them in the right channels. And then you know, really focusing on Los Banos education, training on some additional support there, and then getting another community relations hire is on the horizon, which is going to really help us expand our coverage. My last slide. Are there any questions?
Yep.
Gwen, thank you very much. Just a question, and then we also have to have an answer from someone else. Looking at the participation rate, and I don't know if this is something that we've examined as an entity, and the participation rate is pretty much always 97%. have we ever looked at whether we should have a goal of increasing that? And if so, because of extra awareness, favorability, more engagement? If it was possible to increase that even 1%, would that be coming, just a wild guess, from residential or the outreach to small and medium business?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, so the participation rate, it has just like 97%. There's sort of a natural ebb and flow. You know, when we get a couple customers that opt out, we inevitably turn over to previous accounts that had opted out, and there's new customers and we re-enroll, and so we're sort of at that steady state over the last few years. To do an outreach to customers to do a re-enrollment campaign, we have actually looked at that a couple of times. There's a variety of challenges around it, but it would be mostly a residential outreach. We only have really a handful of commercial customers that have opted out. As far as numbers go, the numbers are on the residential side primarily, because then we're looking at this as a strictly a number of participation, not necessarily like load or energy sales. It's a number of accounts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
You speak a little bit to favorability. That number seemed, look, these are people who know about PCE. And the favorability was sort of flat, actually going down. What?
Yeah, when you tease that out, and in the memo and the slides from August, what you actually see is that it's not that the people who aren't not favorable, they're not unfavorable. It's just that they don't have enough information about it to say whether or not they are favorable. And then there's a small percentage that are kind of that mark off being actively unfavorable. It's like 3%. So it's pretty small. And when you dig into that, there tend to be higher misperceptions about the organization. So they might think that we are an arm of PG&E, that we're a for-profit, that we are an extra or, you know, an additional charge. So there are these misperceptions that, you know, we can actually work on correcting. And then even, you know, so there's not just the unaware, and then there's the misperception. So we have kind of two ways that we can increase on favorability.
You're saying that we'll call them the unaware, you're saying they're kind of neutral, they're not willing to say yes, but they're not saying no, is that?
Exactly. They were saying, I don't have enough information to say whether.
Did your brand awareness campaign, I mean, obviously they're already aware, they already say they know what PCE, but in theory, the awareness campaign further boosts their information so that presumably you can move them from, I don't know, to a yes?
I think of it in different stages. So the brand awareness is really just about getting people to feel warm and fuzzy about us as an organization. And that really is upstream. And then favorability or familiarity, favorability would consider the sort of downstream funnel metrics. We might have other campaigns to address that. So, you know, there are communications around programs and other ways that we communicate our value that are just one level deeper than, hey, we're Peninsula Clean Energy, and, you know, we want you to feel good about the fact that we're your community energy agency. So that's how we would address that, but they'll be like kind of different campaigns.
Any other questions, Betsy?
Is there, I love what you're doing. Is there any place where on the website or someplace where we can get a list of all the community events that are being sponsored by PCE?
People are working on that now. Yes. Yeah, that's in progress.
Because I'll come across an event and all of a sudden see that PCE is a sponsor and it's like, great, wish I'd known. Thanks.
Next up is Leslie Brown for our account services.
Goals and objectives. So really the primary goal related to distribution is customer retention and satisfaction. Some of the ways we're achieving that is through, excellent customer care. We've added a new member of our team in the info at engaging everybody in the state and said people are going with that she's also wanting to ensure that customers have access to their data, we're doing good things with their data and analyzing their usage. Offering them products and better information over time, segmentation and how we want to put customers. Really beefed up our data analytics currently, their data analytics team working with him working in the data warehouse, and then maintaining our operations for excellent relationship with Union in our billing data management provider Calpine. Really high touch relationships with both of those vendors that ensure that we get everyone hopefully on time correctly. So again, a couple of these metrics we share with the marketing team, the participation rate and engagement with residential and small commercial accounts. But specific to our team with the data and analytics, like I mentioned, really sort of beefing that up internally this past year, creating some new analyses and snapshots for us to get a better idea of what customers are doing. Getting a little bit better at being able to estimate or calculate actual savings for some of the reports that we're doing for your cities annually, which I know you folks appreciate, as well as creating some analyses around vulnerable customers that we're looking to do some maybe some additional outreach to those folks, help them understand their bills better, maybe help them encourage them to charge better rate that might work better for them. And make sure that they have access to assistance programs that are good. And then with our key accounts, just want to highlight a little bit, Justin Pine, who came on about a year ago. He's really been doing a great job this past year, re-engaging with our large accounts. We've had some really interesting conversations with folks, some that aren't actually our customer right now. We're thinking of wanting to rejoin our service with Clean Energy. As well as engaging with some of our larger accounts that are doing some expansion, some electrification, and digging into what can we offer our folks that have some really exciting stuff going on, and how we can make sure to support our larger customers in the next few years. So really exciting stuff. A couple other highlights. Added another member to my team, account services senior analyst. So you guys met with her or heard her present Connor at the Citizens Advisory Committee. He's fantastic. He's actually keeping his mind. So that's a great hire for us. He's on our team for several years before I hired him. And also worked with the phase one of the cost of service study and help facilitate that. Looking to help with the phase two, closing that out over the next few months. One of the surprising heavy lifts this past year was getting our rates uploaded into the state platform, this MIDAS platform with the CEC. We ended up working closely with Calpine to assist with that. She was working really hard to teach about programming in this new language to upload it. She did a great job, but it just really became Calpine stepped in and helped us out with that, and we really leveraged that relationship to get that done. There's more to come on that program. We're going to hear about it more probably next year, but that was a heavy lift that we addressed this year as well. And other big thing that we did over the last few months was develop that solar billing plan tariff. So a lot of work over the last several months to the other CCAs with PG&E, with Calpine, crafting that plan so that we can move forward this next year with implementation. So top of the implementing that's what we're really planning tariff over this next year, which, like I mentioned, is very complicated in the back end processes. There's still quite a bit of work to do with PG&E to flesh that out and make sure that we get the updates that we want on the bill presentment so that it is functional for customers to read. Another project we're working on right now is revamping our collection processes for closed accounts and bad debt. Some of you might recall that we suspended all that activity during COVID timeframes. Most of the CCs have now started to reinstate that activity. We're looking to reinstate that as well. I've been working with Andy and Mike Maher on in Calpine and looking at some of those old accounts, making a plan to move forward. So we'll bring you some updates on that over the next couple of months, but we're moving forward with I think, a really great sort of enhancement on that for past due debts from closed accounts. And expanding on the analysis for vulnerable customers, one of the things that you guys also might have remembered over the COVID timeframes, the AMP program that allows customers to have really like large amounts of utility debt on their bill between ministers this program. It's a way for customers to get started over on that. People fall off of that program in the middle sometimes, and they have to wait a year and then they can get back onto it. One of the things we're looking at is helping to identify the people that are eligible to re-sign up for that program again and help them get re-signed up so they can clear out those past due debts. It's good for us, it's good for the customer, good for PG&E as well. So it's sort of a win-win all the way around there. And then as Phil mentioned, working on this customer-centric delivery services, potentially some enhancements and updates to our contact center, bringing some of that in-house, looking at that over the next several months as well. How we can help move to this next phase of PC operations to bring better delivery, more cohesive services for our customers going forward.
Okay,
Jerry.
Question?
And any questions? Yes.
Leslie, thank you. Data Connect.
Yes.
Talk about timely uploads of customer gas data. And
Yeah.
this is primarily commercial customers.
Yes.
And I assume you're trying to get gas data from PG&E. Why are we concerned with that?
Yeah, no, sorry, yeah, great question. So from the customer perspective, the Data Connect portal is actually a really great tool. It's a way for customers to get when we upload the gas data to that portal, then they can extract all of their data from all of their services in one data stream. Which our larger customers that have some facility managers, they really like that. They really like being able to pull all their data in one download, in one data stream. And so that's been a really great addition for folks that want that access and want that usage information to be able to get it. We're also using with that gas data, it's been a bit of it's been assistance for some of the programs that we're executing with electrification for the home upgrade. Our partner agency that works with also can go in and with the customer's permission, access all of that back-end data from the customer and do some analysis around the transitions for electrifying some of the appliances like the gas hot water heater, the induction cooktop, the other things that we're doing in that program, they're using that data as well.
Would that eventually also be available to residential customers?
So it is technically available on the residential side. It's the platform, when this platform was put out by Utility API, it was really more for, they built it out initially as an interface for vendors so that it can be a way for vendors to have verified access to customer data for doing proposals, primarily for like solar installations. A lot of solar vendors that use that platform on the back end. When we brought it on, we wanted to also add in this feature for customer access. It's not pretty right now for like a residential customer, and so the data extracts would be a little overwhelming, I think, for your average residential customer. It makes sense on a industrial or commercial scale. We haven't yet determined if we want to make a bigger investment in that platform, because we would have to make some development investment to make it nicer for residential. I think we're up for renewal that program or that contract, that service contract over the next like 18 months or so. So that's just one thing we're looking at is, do we want to take this to another level, or is what we have right now, you know, the right, we're working for what we need.
I'm asking about residential because thinking in the future of convincing residential customers to transition. And a lot of that is the buy-in from the contractor who can access data to show the customer what they're going to see.
Yeah, so the customer, the contractor can access that data now through the portal. It's just not, it's not pretty for like a homeowner.
I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
sure.
Yeah, the key account question, we've talked about this in the past, but not recently, and we all see the Caltrain wires going
Yeah.
up.
Yes,
And what's the Caltrain plan?
sure. Yeah, we've got Caltrain planning. So Justin's been very involved with the Caltrain team. We've had a lot of meetings with them. We actually just got an update from them a couple weeks ago with some updated load projections, which we gave to Rory's team to take a look at. But they're saying, or their consulting team that we're working with, is saying they're gonna start going, they're ready to go live, you know, with a fairly, you know, sort of fully electrified schedule, starting next fall. So September 2024 is their projection. August, September timeframe is to turn on Irving Blue Live, and they've gotten all of their clearances from PG&E. That's one of my questions asked. Are you waiting anything from PG&E, or you're done? They're like, no, we're done. Great. That's.
And do they buy that power from a central location? How does that?
So there's two, yeah, so they've got two sort of power up stations. There's one the one here in our service territory, and then there's one in San Jose. And so we've been having conversations with their group has been having conversations with both us and San Jose. We put them in contact with San Jose as well. You know, there's no plans to not buy that power from us, but we are having some conversations about you know, what that mix is gonna look like, because they've got some other goals that they're looking to fill. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. Okay, now we're gonna move on to public policy, which will be tag team by Jeremy, Senior Director of Regulatory Policy, and Mark Hirschman, our Director of Government Affairs.
Forward, we'll be back and forth here, but it's a quick reminder for our departmental goals. To strongly advocate for public policies that advance municipal communities' organizational priorities. So on the regulatory side, that means educate and engage with policymakers to develop policies that support PCE's organizational priorities.
On the legislative side, we're supporting legislation that are favorable and opposing that which would be detrimental to municipal clean energy and the CCAs in general. And then we also have as objective the growth and the expansion of CCAs, expansion for the addition of other CCAs throughout the state.
And so looking at our indicators, as Andy relayed earlier in terms of the financials, this present year has been a particularly favorable year in terms of revenue. But part of that is that the PCIA has been at record lows during this year. The power tariff and difference adjustment that our customers pay, they've been either at zero or even negative in some cases for customers. So in terms of the marks around the PCIA, we're doing quite well there. Now that's largely just due to market forces rather than squeezing policy.
And our legislative impact has been on target. We see challenges. I think taking the challenges first. The challenges we've seen are those that are being experienced by all TCAs, challenge in general, to government entities. We see challenges ahead with a difficult budget year next year. And, there are other considerations along those lines. But in terms of our legislative impact, feel very good about the impact we've had this past year. You know that for the first time, municipal clean energy sponsored legislation closely with the author, Becker, legislation was born out of the discussion that board members had with Senator Becker a year ago, facilitated and produced, really showed a team effort. Appreciate the many letters that we received from jurisdictions in support of the bill, testimony in Sacramento in 3 different committee hearings by board members, Bolton, Medina, and Fung. And the bill advanced till the last minute. About that. The other side, there was a bill that was a deep concern to us. It was the governor's budget proposal that came in earlier this year. Mentioned earlier in a slide, the AB 1373. We were able to work with other CCAs collaboratively to have that budget proposal turned into legislation. Once it was turned, became a bill, we worked hard to along with other CCAs to have that amended, and finally the bill that passed was something that we were able to go neutral on.
And in terms of regulatory impact beyond PCIA, our team is continuing to do excellent work across supporting this agency's programmatic objectives and procurement objectives. We're demonstrating thought leadership in a number of different ways. Some examples are the slice of day resource adequacy concept. There's a longer conversation for another day, but it's shifting resource adequacy to consider capacity needs throughout all hours of the day, which aligns better with our own 24/7 objectives for renewable supply in all hours of the day. And say on the programmatic support side, we have been doing fair amount to help aid our programs team to gain access to funds outside of our immediate revenues, but towards programmatic means, as well as to explore with the state greater opportunities for partnership and collaboration to allow for more widespread success, and just to help spread the gospel of all the great work that our programs team is doing, making sure the state is well aware of that work.
On coalition building, we've been very successful at working with Cal CCA. We are for our DEA policy, doing outreach for environmental justice groups and other groups that support goals that we have. So we support that they're advocating. And so appreciate again the great support within the county, within support for our legislation this past year. Diverse group of organizations here, Quality District, and others weighed in with us.
And just quickly on coalition building as well, as far as the regulatory team, Doug Carpon, my team has been doing an excellent job of maintaining a routine dialogue with environmental groups and environmental justice groups to discuss whatever the timely matters are to discuss in terms of regulatory and sometimes legislative affairs as well, in terms of, as I said, RA reform, forward planning, and integrated resources plan, and so forth.
CCA growth. Yeah, so we have a red splotch screen. That is our efforts at CCA growth and British on.
I won't take up too much time, but we've been having some internal discussion about a reality check on this particular metric. Unfortunately, it's the conversations that we've been having on and off with the folks at Merced County. Merced County would be our next obvious expansion opportunity. That is where the city of Las Vegas is located. They just have not engaged for quite a while, and they're just focused on different things. There are a couple of other sort of chilling effects going on in the market, one of which is lawsuits happening right now for a couple of CCAs that fell out of RA compliance, who then were slapped with significant penalties, including an inability to expand for a 2-year period. We have dodged that bullet, which is great. As we said earlier, we went to town and we filled up all of our short positions. So that's not our situation, but it does have a chilling effect. And most recently, the city of Vacaville was walking down the path to join MCE and ultimately decided against it
which all is sort of leading up to the biggest reality check, which is the economics right now of forming a new CCA or joining a CCA in terms of power procurement and just the overall cost of energy would be an expensive proposition for us. We've done the analytics on what it would cost us, and frankly, it's out of the money on that right now, and it's not great for customers. So what we are suggesting here is that CCA growth would remain a goal, but that it may shift back a couple of years in priority until things improve in the marketplace, because we're just not seeing it. And that's not just PCE, but across the board. It's since COVID, things just stopped, and it just really has not, it's not recovered. So we can talk more about it if you want, but just wanted to let you know our thoughts on where we're at with this, so that when you see red, it's not due to lack of effort, but just a reality check on the market.
So 2 questions. This whole initiative from the feds on hydrogen. Number 1, does that have anything to do with this? And secondly, on this report, it talks about local political pushback in other regions of the state. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I'm not sure about the first question around hydrogen. Others might want to opine. I don't think so. I have not heard that, but there may be other information. When we talk about local political pushback from other regions, that's really the Vacaville example. And we're not getting pushback from the county of Merced. We're just not getting any uptake. They're just, and it's like, there's only so many times you want to knock on the door without being an incredible pest about it.
So this is not fossil fuel putting out extensive scare tactics.
I mean, some of that is going on,
Gas.
some of that's going on around electrification. It is not happening with respect to CCA. There was a code of conduct that was passed in 2011 to shut that down. So we're not seeing any of that. There has been some negative social media going on in Los Banos. We've talked to the board about that. We've since visited with Marianas and the city manager, and I'm glad to say that that's really turning around, and we are not seeing the opt-outs that we've had. So Marianas, I know you're on this call. We look forward to continuing to provide value in Los Banos so that you become a champion for us in Merced County. But they're new, these are all new customers. And so we just need a little time to put this back in a priority position. So just want to take a little time out, make sure everybody was cool with that.
Could you speak to a little bit more about the economics? You mentioned cost of acquisition of new customers. The ratepayers, could you speak to a little bit more about that?
Yes, and Roy will back me up here, but we've done some analysis recently, not only around sort of bringing on new communities, new customers, but also in the commercial space. Because any new customer growth requires us to go out and procure a new power supply. And we are at a historic high water mark right now. So adding customers right now, just economically, there's not a lot of headroom. And in fact, in some cases, we would be operating at a loss for a little while to absorb that new customer base. So when you've got that situation combined with sort of a general lack of interest going on and some other sort of stuff happening regionally, sort of adds up to, should we stop pushing so hard at the moment, wait a little bit for things to improve, for Los Banos to really yield its benefits and join the kind of championing of that in Merced, and then come back within a year or two to make it a priority.
So from what I'm hearing here is the margin, the delta between wholesale and retail is not what we're pursuing.
Roy, do you want to add in here?
Sure.
I'll just use one example to demonstrate the cost or the cost shift. So if we expand and add a new city right now, that means our peak load will increase. And that means our resource adequacy requirement will increase. And that will mean that we have to go out and procure additional resource adequacy in a very high price environment right now. And that cost, if we can talk about cost of service, very setting, but that cost will eventually be socialized across all ratepayers service territory, which might not be fair to the current ratepayers to absorb that. So that's the cost implication. As an example.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely appreciate the, I guess, market update and understanding of that. Growth, I think, is still an important goal. So I guess I would just ask as a board member that we, keep this visibility, like even though it's red and not a lot of fun to have on the chart. Let's keep it there, even if we're not actively pursuing it, just so we don't forget about it. And I would just ask if we detect other CCAs go back into growth mode, if you could provide that update to us as well.
Any other questions? Okay. Is that the end?
No, we have one more.
Yeah, a couple more.
Oh, yeah. We'll be quick.
So annual highlights,
Already mentioned it.
sorry, mentioned the legislation work. So I mentioned the slice of day work, the continued thought leadership from DCE's policy team towards reforming the state's IRP and RA policies to better align with their own 24/7 objectives. I'm not gonna read every item on the slide because I know we're getting late here and I hear another presentation after this one too. But one thing that's not on here, and I did want to acknowledge, last year we added a new member to our team, Susanna Clara, who is our compliance manager, and then over the course of this year has done really great work stepping up the sophistication of how we manage our compliance obligations and how we support our teams and their compliance obligations. And then also just this September, we added another member, Dennis Sharp, who's going to be helping with policy advocacy. So we're continuing to grow and continuing to grow our capacity to do more to support this organization. And upcoming priorities, continuing to keep an eye on PCIA as ever-present issue for us. Better supporting our team in terms of their programmatic and procurement support, as Roy mentioned. Compliance, procurement compliance in particular, it's a very sensitive subject area right now, and we are going to be doing a lot to keep the lines of dialogue open with the regulators, that are well informed of any risks in the road as we're getting there towards achieving our procurement objectives.
Just want to pick up on issues I raised earlier this evening. The legislature is in recess until January 3rd. This is the time we're meeting with legislators and staff to Sacramento, local legislators here. And so if anybody is interested in joining us, by all means, let me know. But appreciate the support past year and forward to another good year. 24.
Okay, we have one last section, and that's gonna be me, and we'll be quick about it. So the next section is organizational excellence. The strategic plan goal is to ensure organizational excellence by adhering to sustainable business practices, fostering a workplace culture of innovation, diversity, transparency, and integrity. We have then sub-objectives around 5 different dimensions of organizational excellence. I'm not going to read them now. So we are on target in each of the sort of 5 buckets: staff satisfaction, innovation impact, technology, organizational policies, and governance. You may want to ask me what that yellow was from last year, and I must tell you, I cannot recall. I don't recall. So
I think what it was, we were transitioning with our CEO, we were hiring a new CFO, it was C-suite and
Yeah.
kind of organizational stability around succession planning. And we've obviously hired you, made the transition. I think all those things are.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that
Yeah.
memory. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. So moving on from that, our annual highlights is that we have, I think, made a successful transition to a new CEO. Jan's very happy in retirement. We talk to her often. She's not doing a ton of work for us right now, but will be one remaining project for her to work on. As I mentioned earlier, we're nearing completion of our COO, CFO search, and I'm super excited that we will have a permanent C-suite. It'll be a big help. We have an organizational development initiative underway. We hired the Protrero Group You can look them up if you like. You'll meet them at the board retreat. It's a year-long effort to really just evolve the agency and our internal processes and how we run to mature the organization. And that was kicked off in September with our retreat out at Costa Noa. We've had the first time ever a surplus funds effort. It may happen again. So this committee has been great. We're going to meet for the 5th time on Monday to reallocate approximately $67 million. And then we will be coming back to the committee and to the board with recommendations, but also a recommendation for if this should happen in the future, how do we want to deal with it? Because it's not likely something that we're dying to do every single year. So we've got some thoughts for you to consider. We've have had an effort since I joined last year as COO, and with the help of Kim and all the departments to really think about the manual functions that we've had since startup and how we can automate for efficiency and quality control. So we've had a number of new softwares come on that are agency-wide and are helping our staff, and you hear about those as we go. We had a great summer intern program, first ever, 7 interns, many of whom are still here. You heard already about DEAI, and we had 15 new staff positions since last year that were backfills and new positions. And then we had 7 new board members and 19 alternates come join us in January. So it was a fairly significant turnover in the board composition earlier this year. We do want to give a shout out to everybody who's showing up and learning, and it's been great. And a good successful orientation program that Nellie put together. Our upcoming priorities are a revamped board retreat for November and ongoing strategic discussions throughout the year, build out of our C-suite, and 10 approved new staff positions that you approved through the budget process earlier this summer. We will build out our energy risk management policy to now be an enterprise risk management function under the CFO. Right now, Moya on our team is doing a beautiful job with that. And we're also looking at new protocols for customer data security. Already mentioned organizational development. We want to talk to the board about customer focus, customer-centric approach to our work. It's a shift in the way that we've done things in the past, and we want to have a discussion about that. And then finally, just continued enhancement of our remote first work environment and to aid in productivity, accountability, and overall work enjoyment for the team. And there's more to come with that. So with that, are there any questions? I believe that concludes the strategic plan update. Thank you guys for your patience. Thank you to the staff for being here.
Any questions for Sean? Let me see if there's any public comment on the strategic plan update. Is there any public comment? I don't see any in the room. I don't see any online. I'll close public comment. Thank you very much. That's just, do you have a question?
Yeah, I often have the feeling of not acknowledging when that much work passes in front of me, and I just want to say that was a ridiculous amount of information. And thank you all for everything.
And let me put that in context, that this is a really robust strategic plan. And you can see exactly, and one of the goals we had when we discussed the strategic plan was we wanted it to percolate down to every job. And we had the same discussion when we talked about the DEAI policy. We wanted to address every single job so every staff member understands how they fit in strategically to the overall organization. And I think that really came through in the presentations today. It's very robust.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a comment from Mayor Yanas that just popped up, Nellie?
I'm so glad that showed.
But I couldn't read it because it's still too small for me.
He said, agreed and thank you to everyone.
Oh,
Great.
very good.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, I know it's late. We've got one more item. We would push this to the next meeting, but the next meeting is our retreat. And I don't want to mess up the retreat. So we're gonna move through this quickly. This is all, there's always a PG&E update to rates in the summer. They never hold worth a damn when it comes to actual the rates in the winter, but it's really important to hear what the information is.
Well, I will keep this brief, and we're only here to get this is really the first glimpse at what 2024 rates will likely look like at a very, very high level. In December, at our next regular board meeting, I imagine myself, Leslie, Andy, Haley will all have a much more robust picture of what this specifically means for PCE rates and financials. But this is just a quick tease of what's at play. As Rick mentioned, the ERA case starts in the summertime, gets a substantial update in fall here in October now. And that's really what's prompting this communication to you all at this time. So there are 3 different cases that I will cover at a very, very quick pace, high level, and open it up for some conversation. So as mentioned, the ERA case, the Energy Resource Recovery Account case, is the case that sets PG&E's rates for the coming year. It also sets the power charge indifference rate that our customers have to pay, which then informs what we're able to charge our customers and still preserve the 5% discount. And it often depends on many moving parts, sometimes other proceedings, and then that is the case with this year's or next year's adjustment. There's a pending general rate case, which I'll get to in a later slide in a little detail, which has impacts on the numbers of what would be collected through PG&E's generation rates. There's also what's called an ERA trigger, which is if there's an under collection or over collection beyond a certain percentage of the overall revenue needs, then PG&E is obligated to submit a follow-on application to the commission to propose how to reconcile the under collection or over collection in rates. And so there is one of those occurring in this next year's cycle, and there is some disagreement between us and PG&E and others about exactly how that under collection should be collected through rates. I'll get to that with this slide. So as I mentioned, there's the GRC and the trigger that are both impacting rates and the rate outlook for the next year. This table is showing you a relative change in headroom that's relative to present rates right now. And the headroom is really just the difference between what PG&E's generation rate would be and the applicable PCIA rate for the customer in that particular vintage. These numbers are also just looking at what's called the system average customer class. So it's not a specific customer group, and it's weighted based upon PG&E's distribution of customers. We have a different distribution of customers. So again, these numbers are not a perfect comparison, but they show kind of ballpark movement. Are they positive? Are they negative? And how do they evolve? And why you're seeing a January through June table and then a July through December tables because of that ERA trigger under collection, where PG&E in this case is proposing to collect that under collection only in the first 6 months of next year rather than over the full 12 months of the year. We are arguing it should just be handled over the full 12 months of the year. Fewer rate changes for customers, fewer messaging, fewer back-end tasks to accommodate that. But presently, this is what it looks like. So the first half of the year, whether or not the GRC is adopted, now that's what that second set of columns is, with the 2023 GRC at the head. So one way or the other, with or without the GRC acted on by the commission, the first half of the year looks better for our headroom than the present year, which is a little shocking given how good the headroom has been for this current year in terms of PCIA. However, it would dip down then in the second half of the year. And exactly how it impacts would vary by the vintage. But this is, again, because of that under collection that was being rolled into rates for the first half of the year and then dropping off in the second half of the year. We were a little nervous about just general rate movement between 2023 and 2024 because 2023 had some exceptionally high market premiums. You may recall from wintertime of last year, gas prices were through the roof, and that was flowing through to everyone's gas bills, but it also then impacts electricity costs and ultimately electricity bills. As Roy's mentioned, RA costs are through the roof, continue to be through the roof. We're also even seeing a little uptick in the renewable premium that is part of the PCIA calculation as well, where people are actually transacting, prices are starting to rise for the cost of the renewable attributes in the marketplace right now. So because of that, while gas prices have gotten better than they were last winter time, RA prices are still high, renewable premiums are still high, and so there hasn't been a tremendous amount of movement in the PCIA calculus as a result. I mentioned the general rate case. This is a pending case at the commission. I'm not going to get into the full detail of it. It's thousands of pages of testimony. But where we are right now is the commission is contemplating a proposed decision and an alternate proposed decision. These are for tremendous amounts of money. They're contemplating between a 1.1 and a $1.6 billion increase to PG&E's revenue requirement for the next 3 years. And that equates to roughly somewhere between a $24 and a $28 a month increase for a typical residential customer. So substantial uptick in costs for customers. And I know we are all mindful of just how expensive utility rates are and how challenging that is for people in terms of affordability and for our programmatic objectives. The main drivers of this cost increase have to do with wildfire mitigation. So undergrounding of power lines or insulating of overhead lines. And that's really the key difference between the proposed decision and the alternate is the right mix of undergrounding and insulated lines. The other thing is that there are differences of an opinion of how they should be handling escalation to handle predictions of forward inflation. And so that's where the dollars are shaking out to plus or minus $500 million. The commission has just recently convened oral arguments and an all-party meeting. And at this point, they're more or less going to go silent and come up with their consensus of how they're going to resolve this case. But it's a little unclear given how much attention this is getting, especially from the ratepayer advocacy community because of the sheer size of the dollar amount increases being talked about here, how quickly the commission can actually act on this. And we'll get into the potential timing in a little bit later. And then one other thorny subject area that I know you have been hearing about, at least some of you and some of your other committees, is this income graduated fixed charge. I think I got the acronym backwards there, but anyhow, it is something that's required by legislation from 2022. It was part of a larger bill that was kind of rushed through the end of the legislative season, and there's some very prescriptive language in terms of what the commission has to contemplate and by when. But it's this push to move rate design away from being heavily volumetric based, so scaling with how much you use in a given month, to more of a fixed base where regardless if you use 1 megawatt or kilowatt or 100 kilowatts, a certain portion of your bill is just going to be the same dollar amount each month, regardless of your usage. And the logic being some of the utilities costs really are fixed in nature and don't scale with use. And so the cost should be, the way that those costs are then passed through in rates should better mirror the actual way that those costs manifest for the utility. The other big driver is that this is income based, and the logic there is that lower income ratepayers should be bearing a lower burden or no share of the burden of these fixed costs. And those fixed costs should really shift on to higher income members of the rate base as to create a more equitable rate base. All to say there's a lot of technical detail here. There's competing proposals from the 3 utilities as well as some other parties about what these tiers should look like, what these levels of fixed charges should look like. I'm sure you've seen some things in the news about this. The initial proposals came out around summertime, I want to recall. So there was definitely a media push that came out then. And there continues to be a lot of concern about this. A key detail is that the volumetric costs, the rates, the volumetric component of the bill will drop to account for this fixed charge increase. But again, that fixed charge scales with income level of customers. So some people are going to see higher bills, some people are going to see lower bills, but the volumetric charges will at least be lower. And they are also trying to define these tiers based around both the CARE-FARA eligibility of programs and also income levels based on poverty levels or poverty measures. And there is some discrepancy between parties about, getting a little ahead of myself, but whether that should be a federally based standard or a state-based standard, an area median income standard. And those have some pretty material impacts. And cost of living is substantially higher here in San Mateo County than it is at the federal average. So we certainly feel that a local metric is much more relevant or appropriate to be used in this context. Just another key detail, these fixed charges are for non-generation components of the bill. So our side of the bill continues to just be a volumetric charge, as we have been doing. But there's some gray area around different non-bypassable charges, including power charge and difference adjustment, and how that might be altered in a income graduated fixed charge context. Without getting further mired in details, I'll just lay out here where we are in terms of the schedule for contemplating this. There was just opening briefs from parties filed on this particular issue. There is an opportunity for reply brief quickly coming up. And then you'll see in the last two boxes there, or last two rows there, the commission's not even issuing a proposed decision on this matter until March or April of next year. And even according to the judge in charge of this case, she does not expect these charges to even manifest in rates until the end of 2026. So if you're hearing a lot in the community, a lot of concern around this, the concerns are valid, but the urgency may not be quite what some of the members of the public or the media may be portraying. I'd also say that this commission track is just looking at what should these fixed charge levels be and these tiers should be, but they're not getting into how is this actually going to get done? How is this income information going to flow through to the regulator and or the utilities to actually assign them to account levels? And candidly, my non-attorney opinion is that I think they need to go back to the legislature to get that authority, to get that information to flow. And so I think there's going to be a second legislative bite at the apple that's going to fall on after the commission does whatever it does at this phase. And that will potentially open the can of worms wide to re-examine whether this is really a worthy pursuit or not. So I think I'll leave it there, but I think the final slide was just to say there are 4 more voting meetings in the calendar year. Surprisingly, we've got 3 in November. So the commission is going to be trying to move fast and to resolve some of these cases. And we will have a clearer picture once, say, the general rate case is adopted and we have a proposed decision in the ERA case to know exactly where the rates will be landing for 2024.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any questions? I don't see any questions. Is there any public comment on this item? I don't see any comment in the room. I don't see any comment online. We'll close public comment. That was just informative, so there's no action to be taken. The last item on the agenda is board member reports. Anybody have a report? Tiger Jazz doesn't have a report. That means we're ready to go.
You know what? Oh. You look up YouTube, Mayor's Office, Tiger Jazz, you'll see a interview with Josh Becker. I asked him hard-hitting questions like, what's the next concert you're going to? It's a good time. You might learn something about what he's been working on. Otherwise, just a good time. I'm done.
So
Our new event Saturday.
And Saturday, we're gonna be there at the same place. It's a grand opening of the building that we're gonna tour tomorrow. But there's gonna be a lot more music, food, fun, so. Ready?
Sunday Harvest Fest for living.
Oh yeah, our new library and Parks Rec Center, it's all electric.
Okay.
About that one. Energy social.
Almost a 3-hour meeting, as long as we tolerate. We got out before 3.
Okay, we're gonna feed you well next month.
Yeah.